The restaurant hummed with the kind of controlled chaos I'd grown numb to. Clinking silverware against porcelain, murmured conversations blending into white noise, the occasional burst of laughter from the bar area. I sat rigid in the burgundy leather booth, my fingers tracing the condensation on my water glass, watching the droplets race downward like tears I refused to shed. The air conditioning kissed my bare shoulders with cold precision, raising goosebumps beneath the pale blue dress I'd bought specifically for this dinner. Marcus had said he wanted to talk somewhere nice, somewhere public. I should have known. "You're being pathetic, Claire." His voice cut through my thoughts like a serrated blade. Marcus didn't even look up from his phone as he said it, his thumb scrolling with the same disinterest he'd shown our relationship for the past 6 months. The dim amber lighting caught the edge of his jaw, once something I'd found attractive, now just sharp and cruel, crying about the same things over and over. "Do you know how exhausting you are?" The word landed in my chest like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of humiliation outward until my entire body burned with it. I wasn't crying. I hadn't said anything yet. I'd simply asked if we could talk about the wedding, the one scheduled for 3 months from now, the one whose deposits I'd paid with money I'd saved from double shifts at the hospital. I just thought. My voice came out smaller than I intended, barely audible above the ambient restaurant noise. I hated how weak I sounded, how the words caught in my throat like fishhooks. "That's your problem." Marcus finally looked up, his blue eyes cold and assessing. "You think too much. You feel too much. Nobody wants a fiancé who's constantly needy and emotional. Grow up." The elderly couple at the table beside us glanced over, the woman's expression softening with something like pity before she looked away. That somehow made it worse, the witness to my smallness, my insignificance. I wanted to disappear into the leather booth, to melt into the polished wood floor that reflected the chandelier's fractured light. I swallowed hard, tasting the bitterness of unshed tears. "I'm not being needy. I'm asking you to care about our wedding. About us. You haven't—" "Pathetic," he repeated, louder this time, his phone clattering onto the table between us. "Absolutely pathetic. This is exactly why The air shifted. I felt it before I understood it. A change in pressure, like the moment before lightning strikes. The temperature seemed to drop despite the restaurant's careful climate control. Marcus's words died mid-sentence, his face draining of color so rapidly I thought he might be ill. Then I heard it. A voice from somewhere behind me, low and smooth as aged whiskey, carrying an edge that made my spine straighten involuntarily. "Say it again." Not a request. A command wrapped in silk. The restaurant's ambient noise didn't stop exactly, but it muted, as though someone had turned down the volume on everything except that voice. I felt the weight of attention shift, conversations pausing mid-word, silverware stopping mid-air. Even the servers seemed to freeze in their choreographed movements. I turned slowly in my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs. The booth behind us, one I'd vaguely registered as occupied when we'd arrived, held 3 men. But my eyes went immediately to the one in the center, the one who'd spoken, the one who was now rising to his full height with the fluid grace of something predatory. He couldn't have been much older than 30, but he carried himself with an authority that made age irrelevant. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on old Italian paintings, all sharp angles and classical proportions, olive skin, and a jawline that could cut glass. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my car, tailored so perfectly it seemed painted on. The white shirt beneath open at the collar to reveal a glimpse of tanned throat. A watch caught the light on his wrist, platinum, understated, worth a fortune. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark. Impossibly dark. They fixed on Marcus with the kind of focus that reminded me of nature documentaries, the moment before the predator strikes. There was no anger in his expression, which somehow made him more terrifying. Just cold, calculated attention. The 2 men flanking him were built like walls, broad-shouldered and alert, their hands resting casually at their sides in a way that suggested nothing casual about it. One had a scar bisecting his eyebrow. The other wore an earpiece that caught the light when he tilted his head, his gaze sweeping the restaurant in constant surveillance. I said. The dark-haired man's voice dropped even lower, each word precisely enunciated. Say it again. Marcus had gone corpse pale, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely frightened. I don't... You called her pathetic. The man took a step closer, moving around his table with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. His cologne reached me first, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke, with an underlying warmth that made me think of libraries and leather. Twice, in a public establishment. In front of... His eyes flicked to me for the briefest moment, and I felt the impact like a physical touch. A woman who deserves better than your existence. The restaurant had gone completely silent now. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the blood rushing in my ears. My hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Look, man, this is between me and my fiancé. Marcus tried to inject some authority into his voice, but it came out reedy and desperate. Your fiancé. The stranger's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The one you publicly humiliate? That fiancé? He moved closer still, and I noticed how everyone in the restaurant seemed to lean back instinctively, creating space. Stand up. What? I don't have to. Stand up. 2 words, but they carried the weight of an avalanche. Marcus stood. His hands trembled as he gripped the table edge, and I realized with a strange detachment that I'd never seen him intimidated by anyone. He was always the one in control. Always the one who made me feel small. The dark-haired man studied him like an entomologist examining an insect. Apologize to her. This is insane, Marcus sputtered, his eyes darting to his phone, to the exit, anywhere but the man in front of him. You can't just... One of the wall-like men moved, just a fraction, but it was enough. Marcus flinched. I can do anything I want, the stranger said softly, conversationally, as though discussing the weather. This is my city. That, he gestured to the restaurant around us, is my establishment. You're breathing my air, and you just disrespected someone under my roof. His head tilted slightly, a predator calculating angles. So I'll ask you once more, and then I'll stop asking. Apologize. Marcus turned to me, his face blotchy with fear and resentment. Claire, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Not to me. The dark-haired man's voice cracked like a whip. To her. Look at her when you speak. Mean it. The silence stretched. Marcus's hands were shaking visibly now. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time all evening, and I saw something break behind his eyes. Fear, yes, but also the dawning realization that the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. I'm sorry, Claire, he whispered, for calling you pathetic, for everything. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely, shock and confusion and something else. Something warm and dangerous flooding through me. The stranger regarded Marcus for a long moment, then reached into his jacket. Marcus actually whimpered, but what emerged was a money clip, thick with $100 bills. He peeled off several and dropped them on our table with the casual disdain of someone discarding trash. That covers her meal. Yours too, though you don't deserve it. His eyes, when they met mine again, held something I couldn't name, and a generous tip for the server who had to watch this display. Then he turned to me fully, and the world narrowed to just his face. Up close, I could see the faint scar near his temple, the way his pupils dilated slightly as he looked at me. His presence was overwhelming, not just his physical size, though he was tall and broad-shouldered, but something else. Something that made the air feel charged. Forgive the interruption. His voice, when directed at me, lost some of its edge. Not soft, exactly, but less lethal. I don't tolerate disrespect in my establishments, especially not toward women who deserve infinitely better than... He glanced at Marcus with open contempt. Whatever that is. I should have thanked him, should have said something, but my voice had abandoned me entirely, lost somewhere between shock and the strange flutter in my chest as his dark eyes held mine. He reached into his jacket again. Marcus flinched again and produced a card. Heavy stock, matte black with raised silver lettering. He placed it on the table in front of me, his fingers brushing the wood close enough to mine that I felt the heat of his skin. "If he bothers you again," he said quietly, for my ears only, "call that number. Someone will handle it." Then he straightened, buttoned his jacket with one hand, and looked at Marcus one final time. "Leave. Don't come back to any establishment in this city that I own, and if I hear you've spoken to her like that again—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marcus grabbed his phone with shaking hands and practically ran for the exit, bumping into a server on his way out. Not looking back, the dark-haired man returned to his booth, his two companions following like shadows. The one with the scar murmured something I couldn't hear. The stranger waved a dismissive hand, his attention already shifting to a phone one of them handed him, as though the entire confrontation had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. The restaurant slowly came back to life around me, conversations resuming in hushed, urgent tones, servers moving again, the kitchen's distant clatter filtering through. But I remained frozen, staring at the black card on the table. No name. Just a phone number in silver ink, and below it, a single word: protected. My fingers trembled as I reached for it, the cardstock cool and substantial against my skin. I looked up, back toward his booth, and found him watching me over the shoulder of the scarred man. Our eyes met across the dim restaurant lighting, and something passed between us, a current, a promise, a threat. I couldn't tell. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just held my gaze with an intensity that made my breath catch, then turned back to his conversation as though I'd ceased to exist. I sat there for 20 minutes, the card burning in my palm, my untouched meal growing cold, trying to understand what had just happened, trying to convince myself to leave, to forget, to go home and process the wreckage of my engagement. But I couldn't stop my eyes from drifting back to his table, couldn't stop wondering who he was, what he was, why he'd intervened. Couldn't stop remembering the way he'd looked at Marcus, like something to be erased, and the way he'd looked at me, like something to be protected, like something he'd already decided to keep. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I found myself walking the rain-slick streets of downtown, my heels clicking against wet pavement, the black card heavy in my clutch like a secret I wasn't ready to acknowledge. The city looked different somehow, sharper, more alive. Neon signs reflected in puddles, turning the ground into fractured mirrors of pink and blue and gold. The late autumn air bit through my thin dress, but I welcomed the cold. It kept me present, kept me from floating away on the surreal tide of what had just happened. Marcus had texted 14 times. I'd watched the notifications light up my phone screen without reading them. Each buzz another reminder of how thoroughly the evening had derailed from what I'd expected. He'd probably wanted to break up with me tonight. That's what the somewhere nice, somewhere public had meant. A clean ending in a controlled environment where I couldn't make a scene. Except someone else had made the scene for me. I stopped at the corner of 5th and Madison, staring up at the building that housed the restaurant. Only now, looking at it from the outside, did I notice the details I'd missed on the way in. The discreet security cameras. The valet parking that required more than just money. The way the doorman stood with military precision. The brass plaque beside the entrance read "Sovereign" in elegant script. Nothing else. No explanation, no welcome message. His establishment, he'd said. This is my city. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb, and my heart stuttered before logic reasserted itself. Just another wealthy patron leaving dinner. The city was full of them. It didn't mean... But my hands were shaking as I turned away, heading toward the subway station 3 blocks down. My practical nurse's brain tried to catalog what I knew. Dangerous man. Obvious power. Probably criminal connections. The way his security moved. The casual violence implicit in every word. These weren't the markers of a legitimate businessman. I should throw the card away, block Marcus's number, go home to my shoebox apartment, call in sick tomorrow, and spend the day eating ice cream while watching terrible reality TV like a normal person processing a breakup. I should. The card burned against my palm through the leather of my clutch. 3 days passed before I touched it again. 3 days of Marcus's increasingly desperate messages turning angry, then pleading, then silent. 3 days of my co-workers at St. Mary's asking if I was okay, if the wedding plans were stressing me out, their voices pitched with that particular kindness that made me want to scream. 3 days of double shifts, because going home meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering dark eyes and a voice that had made grown men flinch. It was the flowers that broke me. I came home on Thursday evening to find my apartment building's entrance blocked by the largest bouquet I'd ever seen. Blood-red roses, easily 4 dozen, arranged with white calla lilies in a crystal vase that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My landlord, Mrs. Chen, was hovering nearby with the kind of predatory curiosity that came from 40 years of managing the building. "Came this morning," she said, her Cantonese accent thick with excitement. "Delivery man said it was urgent, very fancy. From your Marcus? We're not." I couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't explain what Marcus and I were now. Instead, I searched the arrangement for a card, my stomach twisting. The envelope was black, heavy stock, expensive. My hands shook as I opened it. "You haven't called. I trust you're well." The roses seemed appropriate, thorns included. D. No explanation, no phone number, though he clearly had mine. Just a single initial in handwriting that looked like it had been formed with a fountain pen, each letter precise and deliberate. D. I stood there in the dingy hallway with its flickering fluorescent lights and peeling linoleum, holding a card from a man who'd terrified my ex-fiancé into a public apology, and felt something dangerous unfurl in my chest. Not fear exactly, something headier, something that made my pulse quicken and my skin feel too tight. "Your Marcus has good taste, Mrs. Chen said approvingly, very romantic. I didn't correct her. I just gathered the impossible bouquet. It barely fit through my apartment door, and set it on the kitchen counter that doubled as my dining table. The roses opened the space with their scent, heavy and sweet, transforming my shabby studio into something else, something that didn't quite belong to me anymore. I pulled out the black card I'd been carrying in my wallet for 3 days, studying it in the amber light of my single-floor lamp. Protected. What did that even mean? Protected from what? From whom? From yourself, a voice whispered in my head. From making decisions you'll regret. I should have thrown it away then, should have donated the flowers to the hospital, blocked whatever number he'd used to find my address, and moved on with my life. Instead, I found myself reaching for my phone. The number rang 3 times, each ring sending my heartbeat higher, before a male voice answered. Not his voice. Someone else's, clipped and professional. "State your name." I almost hung up. Claire Morrison. I received." "One moment, Miss Morrison." The line clicked. Classical music filled the silence, something baroque and precise. I paced my tiny apartment, stepping around the roses, my reflection catching in the darkened window. I looked small, uncertain. My hair falling out of its clip, my scrubs rumpled from a 12-hour shift, dark circles under my eyes. What was I doing? What did I think would happen? The music cut off. "Claire." His voice, unmistakable even through the phone, sent electricity down my spine. "I was beginning to think you'd decided to ignore my gift. My mouth went dry. "How did you get my address?" A pause. I could almost hear the smile in it. "I own this city, remember? Finding one nurse who works at Mary's and lives in a rent-controlled building on the east side isn't exactly challenging." He said it casually, without apology. "Did you like the roses?" They're too much. I can't accept." "You already did. They're in your apartment right now, aren't they? On your kitchen counter, if I had to guess. You don't have much space for something that extravagant." My blood ran cold. "Are you watching me?" "No." Simple, direct. "But I know your building." Studio apartment, 4th floor, faces the street. Rent is $800 a month. which is criminal for the neighborhood, but you stay because Mrs. Chen doesn't ask too many questions and the hospital is walking distance. Am I close? I sank onto my second-hand couch, my legs suddenly unreliable. Who are you? Dangerous question. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the digital distance. Are you sure you want the answer? You sent me flowers. You have my phone number, my address. I stopped, remembering the way Marcus had looked at him. The fear, the immediate capitulation. You scared Marcus badly enough that he's been radio silent for 2 days. I think I deserve to know who I'm talking to. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the faint sound of his breathing. Then, Dante Caruso. Though I suspect you've already Googled the name, I hadn't. But the way he said it, with that particular weight, told me I should have. Should I know you? A low laugh, dark and rich. Probably not. You work too many hours to pay attention to the news. You're too busy saving lives to notice whose names show up in the business section. A pause. Or the crime section. My heart hammered. You're careful. The word was soft but absolute. Don't say anything you can't take back, Claire. Some knowledge is dangerous. I should have hung up. Should have blocked the number, called the police, done anything except what I did next. Why did you help me? The question came out barely above a whisper. At the restaurant. You didn't know me. I wasn't anyone to you. You were someone being disrespected in my establishment. His answer came quickly, but there was something beneath it, something unspoken. I don't tolerate that. That's not all of it. Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Still controlled, but with an edge of something raw. No, it's not. Then what? Have dinner with me tomorrow night, and I'll tell you. My breath caught. I don't think that's... I'm not Marcus. The name came out like a curse. I won't humiliate you. Won't make you feel small. I'm offering dinner, conversation, and honest answers to whatever questions you're brave enough to ask. He paused. And before you say no, understand that I always get what I want, Claire. Always. But I'd prefer you to come willingly. The threat was wrapped in silk, but it was there. Not violence, exactly. Just inevitability. And if I say no, then I'll send more flowers, better gifts. I'll find reasons to be wherever you are until you're curious enough to say yes. I'm patient when I need to be, but... His voice dropped to something almost gentle. We both know you're going to say yes eventually. The only question is whether you make us both wait. He was right. God help me. He was right. I could feel it in the way my pulse quickened, in the way I'd been carrying his card for 3 days, in the way I'd called him despite every logical instinct screaming at me to run. One dinner, I heard myself say. Public place. I arrive separately and leave separately. Done. I'll text you the address. 7 o'clock. He paused, and I could hear something in the background. Voices, movement, and Claire. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. Not for me. For you. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there in my apartment, surrounded by roses that cost more than my weekly salary, holding a phone that connected me to a man who was probably a criminal, definitely dangerous, and undeniably compelling in ways that terrified me. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tomorrow, 7. Don't be late. D. Followed immediately by an address in the warehouse district, a part of the city I'd never been to, where renovated industrial spaces housed the kind of restaurants that didn't need websites, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. I should have ignored it. Should have blocked the number and pretended this whole thing had never happened. Instead, I opened my closet and started looking through my pathetically small collection of dresses, trying to find something that might make me feel even a fraction as powerful as Dante Caruso had made Marcus feel powerless. The black card sat on my counter next to the roses, catching the light. Protected. I was beginning to understand what that word meant, and beginning to fear that I wanted it more than I should. The restaurant didn't have a sign. I stood on the corner of a cobblestone street in the warehouse district, my phone's GPS insisting I'd arrived at my destination, staring at what looked like an abandoned brick building with tall, darkened windows. The October wind cut through my coat, The only nice one I owned, wool and charcoal gray, bought on sale 2 years ago. Underneath, I wore a deep emerald dress I'd found at a consignment shop that afternoon, simple and fitted, hitting just above my knees. It was the most expensive thing I'd purchased in months, and I'd justified it with the kind of financial gymnastics that would have made my accountant mother weep. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. I felt like a fraud. A black car idled at the curb. Not the SUV from before, but a sleek sedan with windows so dark I couldn't see inside. As I hesitated on the sidewalk, the rear door opened and a man stepped out. The one with the scar bisecting his eyebrow. Up close, he was even more imposing, built like a bull, with hands that looked like they could crush concrete. Miss Morrison. His voice was surprisingly cultured, almost gentle. Mr. Caruso is waiting inside. I'm Marco. I'll be escorting you. Every self-preservation instinct I possessed screamed at me to run. This was insane. I was a pediatric nurse from Queens who drove a 12-year-old Honda and had student loans that would outlive me. I didn't belong in whatever world Dante Caruso inhabited, but I thought of Marcus's face in the restaurant. The fear, the immediate submission. And I thought of how small I'd felt for so long, how invisible, how pathetic. That word, the one that had started all of this. Lead the way, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Marco nodded, a ghost of approval in his expression, and guided me to an unmarked steel door. He pressed his palm against a biometric scanner that I definitely hadn't noticed before. The lock disengaged with a heavy click that echoed in the empty street. Inside, the industrial aesthetic continued. Exposed brick walls, steel beams crisscrossing a ceiling that soared 3 stories high, Edison bulbs casting warm pools of light. But this was no abandoned warehouse. The space had been transformed into something extraordinary. Polished concrete floors reflected the ambient lighting. Modern art hung on the walls, originals, I suspected, by artists whose names I wouldn't recognize, but whose work probably cost 6 figures. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive materials, leather and dark wood and brushed metal. And it was completely empty, except for one table. Set in the center of the space beneath a vintage chandelier, a table for 2 waited like a stage set. White linens, crystal glasses catching the light, a single blood-red rose in a slender vase. And standing beside it, hands in the pockets of charcoal slacks, white shirt open at the collar, was Dante Caruso. The photographs I'd finally Googled the night before hadn't prepared me. Professional headshots from business journals, grainy surveillance photos from news articles about alleged organized crime connections, society page images from charity galas. None of them had captured the sheer presence of him. The way he occupied space like he owned not just the room but the air inside it. His eyes found mine across the distance, and I felt that same electric current from the restaurant, stronger now without the buffer of other people. He didn't smile, didn't move, just watched me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. Marco guided me forward, my heels clicking against the concrete, each step feeling both too fast and impossibly slow. When we reached the table, Dante finally moved, pulling out my chair with old-world courtesy that seemed at odds with everything else about him. Claire. My name in his voice was different than it had been on the phone, richer, more intimate. You came. You didn't really give me a choice, I said, settling into the chair, acutely aware of how close he was, the heat of him behind me, that cologne of cedar and smoke wrapping around me like a claim. He moved to his own chair, and I caught Marco's eye as the scarred man retreated toward the entrance. We'll be outside, Marco said to Dante. The perimeter is secure. Perimeter. Like we were in a military operation, not a restaurant. When we were alone, the silence felt weighted. Dante didn't rush to fill it. He simply looked at me, his dark eyes traveling over my face with an attention that felt like touch. I forced myself to meet his gaze, to not look away, even though everything in me wanted to. You're afraid, he said finally. Not a question. I'd be an idiot not to be. I reached for my water glass, needing something to do with my hands. I Googled you last night. Caruso Industries, real estate development, import-export, luxury hospitality, and... I took a breath. 3 separate articles about alleged connections to organized crime. Federal investigations that went nowhere. Witnesses who recanted testimony. And yet you're here. He leaned back in his chair, perfectly relaxed, one arm draped over the armrest. Why? You tell me. You're the one who said you'd answer my questions. A server appeared from somewhere. I hadn't seen any door except the one we'd entered through, with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Dante nodded, and the young man poured with the practiced efficiency of someone who knew better than to make small talk. Then he vanished as silently as he'd arrived. I intervened at Sovereign, Dante said, his fingers tracing the stem of his wineglass. Because I don't tolerate disrespect in my establishments. That's true, but it's not complete. Then complete it. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. You remind me of someone, the way you sat there, taking his cruelty without fighting back, making yourself smaller to accommodate his ego. The way you looked. He paused, something flickering behind his eyes, like you'd forgotten you deserved better. Who? The question came out sharper than I intended. Who do I remind you of? My mother. He said it simply, without dramatics, but I heard the weight beneath it. She spent 20 years married to my father, a man who built an empire on the backs of people he controlled through fear. She never fought back, never left. Just made herself smaller and smaller until there was almost nothing left of who she'd been. I set down my wineglass, untouched. What happened to her? Cancer. 5 years ago. His expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on his glass. By the time she died, I think she was grateful. It was the only escape he'd allow her. The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. I didn't know what to say, how to respond to this glimpse of something vulnerable in a man who seemed carved from marble. I'm sorry, I managed finally. Don't be. It taught me something valuable. He leaned forward, his attention sharpening, that there are 2 types of people in this world, Claire. Those who take power, and those who have it taken from them. My mother was the second. I swore I'd never be, and everyone else? We're just... What? Collateral damage in your quest for power? No. The word was immediate, almost fierce. You're the reason for it. People like you. Good people who work themselves to exhaustion, who give everything and get nothing back, who let men like Marcus make them feel worthless. He stood abruptly, moving around the table with that predatory grace I remembered. You spend your days saving children's lives at a hospital that underpays and overworks you. You live in an apartment that should be condemned. You were engaged to a man who treated you like an inconvenience, and you never once thought you deserved more. He stopped beside my chair, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the faint stubble along his jaw, the way his pulse beat in his throat, the small scar near his temple that I'd noticed before. How do you know all that? My voice came out breathier than I intended. I make it my business to know everything about what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my cheek, and I felt the touch everywhere. But you will be. Because I see you, Claire. All of you. The strength you don't recognize. The fire you've buried under years of making yourself acceptable to people who don't deserve you. And I want it. I should have stood up. Should have left. But his hand lingered near my face, his thumb tracing my jawline with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. This is crazy, I whispered. You're dangerous. A criminal. Someone your logical mind knows you should run from. His eyes held mine, impossibly dark. Say it. I won't be offended by honesty. All of that. And you're looking at me like... I couldn't finish. Couldn't name the way his gaze felt like ownership. Like hunger. Like something that would consume me if I let it. Like you're already mine, he finished softly. Because you are. You just don't know it yet. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent, and something shifted in his expression. Irritation flickering across his features like lightning. He straightened, pulling his phone from his pocket, glancing at the screen. Whatever he saw made his jaw tighten. "Marco," he said, not loudly, but somehow the word carried. The scarred man appeared instantly from wherever he'd been stationed. "We have a problem?" "Rossi's crew. 3 blocks out, heading this direction. 6 cars." Marco's voice was utterly calm, but his hand moved to his jacket. "Could be coincidence." "It's not." Dante's entire demeanor had changed, the cultured veneer falling away to reveal something colder underneath. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a genuine conflict in his expression. "I need to handle this. Marco will take you home." "Wait, what's—" "Not now, Claire." He was already moving, buttoning his jacket, his phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that I couldn't follow. Then he stopped, turned back, and crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides. He cupped my face in both hands, tilted my head up, and kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was claiming, possessive, a brand more than a kiss. His lips moved against mine with absolute certainty, and I felt my body respond before my mind could catch up, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even as some distant part of me screamed that this was insane. He pulled back just enough to speak against my mouth. "You're under my protection now, officially. That means no one touches you, no one threatens you, no one even looks at you wrong. Understand?" I nodded, incapable of words. "Marco will explain the rules. Follow them." He pressed one more kiss to my forehead, surprisingly tender, then stepped back. "I'll call you tomorrow." Then he was gone, striding toward a door I hadn't noticed, 2 more men appearing from the shadows to flank him, and I was left standing there, lips burning, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. Marco cleared his throat gently. "Miss Morrison, we need to leave. Now." "What's going on? Who's Rossi?" "Rival family, and they just declared war by coming to this neighborhood." He guided me toward the exit with a hand that was firm but not rough. "Mr. Caruso needs to handle it, and he can't do that if he's worried about your safety." We emerged into the night air, and I saw what I'd missed on the way in. The black SUVs positioned at both ends of the block, the men in dark suits standing at intervals, all of them alert and armed. This wasn't a restaurant. It was a fortress. Marco opened the car door. "There are rules now, Miss Morrison, for your protection. I'll explain them on the way to your apartment." I slid into the back seat, my mind reeling, my lips still tingling from Dante's kiss. Through the tinted windows, I watched the warehouse district slide past, saw the shadows moving in alleys, the cars that followed at a discreet distance. Protected. I finally understood what the word meant, and I was terrified by how much I wanted it. The rules, as Marco explained them during the 20-minute drive to my apartment, were non-negotiable. I was to vary my route to work, never leave the hospital alone after dark, check in via text twice daily, morning and evening, accept the security detail that would be discreetly following me. Don't go anywhere unfamiliar without notifying them first. And above all, if anyone approached me asking about Dante, about the Caruso family, about anything remotely connected to his world, I was to say nothing and call the number Marco programmed into my phone immediately. "This is insane," I'd said, watching the city lights blur past the window. "I'm a nurse. I don't need armed guards." Marco's expression had been gentle but immovable. "You're under Mr. Caruso's protection now. That makes you a target. Rossi would love nothing more than to hurt something Dante values." Something Dante values. The words had sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the October cold. Now, 3 days later, I was beginning to understand what Marco had meant. The first indication came Sunday morning when I left for my shift at St. Mary's. A black sedan was parked across from my building, windows tinted, completely unremarkable except that it had been there when I'd gone to bed and was still there when I woke. As I walked toward the subway, it pulled smoothly into traffic, maintaining a distance of exactly 1 block, my shadow. I should have been frightened, should have felt violated, stalked. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Safe. Like nothing could touch me as long as that car was there, as long as Dante's invisible net surrounded me. The second indication came at work. I was checking vitals on a 4-year-old with pneumonia, making silly faces to distract her from the blood pressure cuff, when my charge nurse, Patricia, appeared in the doorway with an expression I couldn't read. "Claire, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." My heart jumped. "Who?" "Didn't give a name. Just said to tell you it's about the flowers." Patricia's eyebrows rose meaningfully. "Very well dressed. Very intense." I found him in the family waiting area, looking completely out of place among the anxious parents and crying children. Not Dante. I recognized this man from the restaurant, the one with the earpiece who'd stood at Dante's left. He stood when he saw me, his suit immaculate despite the hospital's fluorescent harshness. "Miss Morrison, I'm Luca. Mr. Caruso asked me to deliver this personally." He handed me a small box, black velvet, the kind that held expensive jewelry. "I can't accept. It's not a gift. It's a tool." His voice was quiet, pitched for my ears only. "Open it later, somewhere private, and wear it. Always." He left before I could argue, moving through the pediatric ward with the same efficient grace all of Dante's men seemed to possess. I slipped the box into my scrubs pocket, feeling it rest against my hip like a secret, and tried to focus on work, but my hands shook as I charted medications, and I kept touching the box through the fabric, wondering what kind of tool came in velvet packaging. I waited until my lunch break, locked myself in the women's locker room, and opened it. A necklace. Delicate white gold chain, so fine it looked like spider silk, with a pendant that seemed simple at first glance. A small disc, perhaps an inch in diameter, engraved with what looked like a family crest. Beautiful, but understated. The kind of thing I might actually wear without feeling ridiculous. The note tucked beneath it was in Dante's handwriting. "Press the center if you need me. I'll come. Always. D." My fingers trembled as I lifted the necklace. The pendant was heavier than it looked, and when I examined it closer, I saw the tiny seam around the edge. Not just jewelry. A panic button disguised as adornment. I should have refused it. Should have mailed it back. Ended whatever this was before it went any further. Instead, I clasped it around my neck, feeling the cool metal settle against my sternum like a claim, like a collar, like protection I didn't want to admit I needed. Dante called that night at 11, after my shift ended and I was home, exhausted and wired simultaneously. I'd been staring at my phone for an hour, the black card still on my counter beside the wilting roses, trying to convince myself not to answer when he called. I answered on the first ring. "You're wearing it." Not a question. Certainty in every syllable. I touched the pendant through my shirt. "How do you—" "It has a sensor. Tells me when you put it on, when you take it off, where you are if you press it." His voice was rough, like he'd been shouting or smoking or both. "You didn't take it off after your shift. Why?" I should have lied. Should have said I forgot, that it meant nothing. "It makes me feel safe," which is probably exactly what you intended. A sound between a laugh and something darker. "You're learning. That's good. You'll need to learn quickly." "Why? What happened with Rossi?" Silence stretched between us, filled with the sound of his breathing and distant voices in the background. "Nothing you need to worry about. It's handled." "Handled how?" "Claire." My name was a warning. There are parts of my world you don't want to know about. Trust me on this. "You can't do this." I stood, pacing my tiny apartment, anger bubbling up to replace the fear I'd been carrying. "You can't insert yourself into my life, give me armed guards and panic buttons, kiss me like—" I stopped, heat flooding my face. "Like what?" His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the phone line between us. "Like you're mine? Like I've been thinking about you every second since I left. Like the only thing that kept me sane tonight was knowing you were safe?" My breath caught. "Dante, I want to see you. Now. Tonight. It's almost midnight. I have a shift at 7. I don't care." The rawness in his voice made my stomach clench. "I need to see you, to touch you, to prove you're real and safe and—" He broke off, and I heard something crash in the background, glass shattering. Fuck, I'm sorry. Tonight was difficult. Forget I said anything. "Where are you?" "My office. Downtown. Why? I grabbed my coat before I could think better of it. Send a car. I'll come to you. Claire, you don't have to. I know I don't. Send the car, Dante. He did. The building was unmarked, like the restaurant. But this was in the heart of the financial district, where skyscrapers competed for dominance. The car pulled into an underground garage, and Marco, apparently my permanent escort now, guided me to a private elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. Top floor, he said, handing me the keycard. He's alone. Security is stationed on the floor below if you need anything. The elevator rose smoothly, my reflection staring back at me from the polished brass doors. I still wore my scrubs, my hair in a messy bun, dark circles under my eyes from too many shifts and too little sleep. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman who had no business being in this elevator, going to see a man who was probably a criminal because he'd said he needed her. The doors opened directly into a penthouse office that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, making it look like a field of stars laid out below. The decor was all dark wood and leather, expensive art, shelves lined with books in what looked like Italian and Latin. A bar in the corner held bottles that probably cost more than my car, and standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, was Dante. He'd shed his jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. His hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. When he turned, I saw the cut on his cheekbone, the beginnings of a bruise along his jaw. Christ, you actually came. He crossed the space between us in long strides, his hands framing my face, tilting it up to search my features. You shouldn't have. I shouldn't have asked. I reached up, touching the cut on his face gently. What happened? Rossi's son didn't appreciate the message I sent his father. His eyes closed briefly at my touch. He's young, stupid. Thought bringing a knife to the meeting would make him look strong. My fingers trembled against his skin. Did you kill him? No. But he'll remember not to disrespect me again. Dante's hand slid from my face to my shoulders, down my arms, like he was checking to make sure I was whole. You're wearing scrubs. You called at 11. I didn't have time to change into something that makes me feel powerful. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You came anyway. That's power enough. He pulled me closer, until I could feel the heat radiating from him, smell the copper tang of blood mixed with his cologne. Do you know what you're doing to me, Claire? What it means that you're here. Probably the same thing you're doing to me. The admission came out barely above a whisper. Making me want things I shouldn't want. Making me feel things that terrify me. Good. His forehead rested against mine, his breathing unsteady. Be terrified. This thing between us. It's not safe. It's not healthy. It's obsession and possession, and 100 other things that should make you run. His hands tightened on my waist. But don't run. Please. I don't think I could survive it. You barely know me. I know enough. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. I know you take double shifts to avoid going home to an empty apartment. I know you put everyone else first until there's nothing left for yourself. I know you were going to marry a man who made you feel worthless because some part of you believed you didn't deserve better. And I know... His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt the touch everywhere, that when I kissed you, you kissed me back like you were drowning and I was air. He was right. God help me. He was right about all of it. This is crazy, I said, even as my hands fisted in his shirt, even as I pulled him closer, completely. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. But you're here anyway. I'm here anyway, I echoed. He kissed me then, slower than the first time, but no less consuming. His hands mapped my body through the thin scrubs, learning the curve of my waist, the hollow of my spine, the rapid beat of my pulse at my throat. I lost myself in it, in him, in the impossible reality of being wanted this intensely by someone this powerful. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. He rested his forehead against mine, his hands still holding me like I might disappear. Stay, he said quietly. Tonight, just stay with me. Nothing has to happen. I just need you here." It was the vulnerability in his voice that decided it. This man who commanded fear from grown men, who controlled an empire, who could make people disappear with a phone call. He was asking, not demanding. Needing, not taking. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll stay." The relief that flooded his expression was almost painful to witness. He led me through a door I hadn't noticed, into a bedroom that was somehow both opulent and Spartan. A massive bed dominated the space, but the rest was minimal. Dark furniture, blackout curtains, nothing personal except a single photograph on the nightstand of a dark-haired woman who had to be his mother. He gave me one of his shirts to sleep in, disappeared into the bathroom to clean the cut on his face. And when he emerged, I was sitting on the edge of his bed in borrowed clothes, my pendant still around my neck, wondering what I'd just agreed to. Dante crossed the room, kissed my forehead with surprising tenderness, and pulled back the covers. "Sleep, Claire. You're safe here. I promise." I slid under the sheets, and he joined me, but stayed on his side, leaving space between us. The gesture was so at odds with everything else about him that it made my throat tight. "Dante?" I said into the darkness. Why me? Really, there are probably hundreds of women who'd be easier, who fit your world better." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hand found mine in the darkness, fingers interlacing. "Because you're good," he said finally. "Genuinely good, in a way I've never been and never will be. And when I look at you, I don't see someone who fits my world. I see the only thing in this world worth protecting." His grip tightened. "So yes, it's obsession. It's possession. It's probably a dozen kinds of unhealthy. But it's also the closest thing to salvation I've ever known." I turned toward him in the darkness, found his face inches from mine, his eyes catching the faint light from the city beyond the windows. "I don't need saving," I said. "I know." He smiled, small and sad. "But maybe I do." I closed the distance between us, kissing him with all the certainty I didn't feel, all the terror and desire and impossible hope that maybe, somehow, this could be something other than disaster. When we finally fell asleep, his arms were wrapped around me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. And maybe, in that moment, I was. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Dante's call, the midnight drive, his bruised face and desperate hands, the way he'd held me like I was something precious. I sat up, finding myself alone in his massive bed, still wearing his shirt that smelled like cedar and smoke. My phone showed 6 missed calls from the hospital and 15 texts. Panic jolted through me until I saw the time. 5:47 a.m. My shift didn't start until 7. I hadn't overslept. "You're awake." Dante stood in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups, looking nothing like the raw, vulnerable man from last night. He'd showered, shaved, wore a fresh suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. The cut on his cheekbone was barely visible. Only the faint bruise on his jaw remained as evidence of whatever violence had occurred. "I was about to wake you. Marco's downstairs with the car. He'll take you home to change and get you to St. Mary's on time." The efficiency of it stung somehow. Like last night had been a moment of weakness, he was already compartmentalizing, filing away, moving past. He must have seen something in my expression, because he crossed the room, setting the coffee on the nightstand and sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm not trying to rush you out, but you have responsibilities, and I won't be the reason you're late or lose your job." His fingers brushed my cheek, gentle despite the calluses I could feel on his palm. "Though I'd prefer to keep you here, locked away where nothing can touch you. That sounds like a prison. A gilded cage is still a cage." He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'm aware of the irony. My mother lived in one for 20 years. I swore I'd never do that to someone I—" He stopped, the word hanging unspoken between us. "Someone I care about." I caught his hand before he could pull away. "What happens now? Between us?" "That depends." His dark eyes searched mine, "on whether you can accept what I am. Not who I pretend to be in boardrooms and charity galas, but what I actually am." a criminal. I said it plainly, without judgment. Among other things. He didn't flinch from the word. I've killed men, Claire. Not recently, not often. But I have. I've ordered worse done to people who betrayed me. I control territory through fear and violence and money. The legitimate businesses are real, but they're built on a foundation of things that would put me away for life if anyone could prove them. His hand tightened on mine. I'm telling you this because you deserve honesty. Because if you stay, if you choose this, you need to know exactly who you're choosing. My nursing training kicked in, the part that assessed, that looked for signs of danger, that made calculated decisions about risk and reward. Every rational cell in my body screamed that I should leave, should walk away from this beautiful, damaged, dangerous man and return to my safe, small life. But I thought about Marcus, about years of making myself smaller, about being called pathetic and believing it. I thought about how Dante looked at me, not with the casual dismissal of someone who found me convenient, but with an intensity that suggested I mattered, that I was worth protecting, worth obsessing over, worth anything. I should be terrified, I said quietly. You should be. I should leave and never look back, probably. His thumb traced circles on my palm. But you won't. How do you know? Because you're still holding my hand. Because you slept in my bed and didn't run when you had the chance. Because... He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. You feel it too. This thing between us. This inevitability. He was right. I did feel it. Had felt it from the moment he'd turned in that restaurant booth, from the first time those dark eyes had fixed on me with absolute focus. I have conditions, I heard myself say. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Maybe respect. Name them. I keep my job, my apartment, my life. I won't be locked away like your mother was. Agreed. With security adjustments for your safety. You don't make decisions about my life without consulting me first. Within reason. If there's immediate danger, I act first and explain later. I nodded. That was fair. And you're honest with me. Always. I don't need to know every detail of your business, but I won't be lied to. Done. He pulled me closer, until I was sitting in his lap, his arms wrapped around me. Anything else? Yes. I met his eyes, needing him to understand this. I'm not your possession. I'm not something you own. If I stay, it's because I choose to. Every day. And the day I choose to leave, I'll let you go. The words seemed to cost him something. I won't like it. I'll probably try to change your mind. But I won't cage you. You have my word. It should have been comforting. Instead, I saw the truth beneath it. He didn't think I'd ever want to leave. And the terrifying part was, looking into his eyes, feeling the solid warmth of him around me. I wasn't sure he was wrong. Okay, I whispered. Then I'm choosing this. Choosing you. For now. The kiss he gave me was different from the others, softer, deeper, like a promise being sealed. When he pulled back, his eyes were impossibly dark. You should know, he said quietly, that I'm not good at sharing or at being casual. If you're mine, Claire, you're mine completely. That means I'll know where you are, who you're with, what you're doing. It means I'll eliminate any threat to you without hesitation. It means... Possession, I finished. Obsession. You already warned me. And you're staying anyway. I'm staying anyway. I touched the pendant at my throat. At least until you give me a reason not to. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of doubled realities. By day, I was still Claire Morrison, pediatric nurse, living in a rent-controlled apartment, taking the subway to work. But now I had shadows, discreet but present. The black sedan that followed me everywhere. The security detail that Marco coordinated with military precision. My coworkers noticed but didn't ask, probably assuming I had a wealthy boyfriend who was overprotective. They weren't entirely wrong. By night, I existed in Dante's world. Dinners at restaurants that didn't have signs, driven in cars that cost more than I'd make in 5 years, surrounded by men who carried guns, and showed me the kind of deference usually reserved for royalty. Dante introduced me to his inner circle, Luca with his quiet competence, Marco with his unexpected gentleness, others whose names I learned and whose loyalty to Dante was absolute. I met his world, but I kept mine separate. He never pushed to meet my friends, never suggested I quit my job, never tried to change who I was. Instead, he adapted, learning my schedule, arranging dates around my shifts, sending food to the hospital when he knew I'd worked through lunch. The possessiveness was there, always there, simmering beneath the surface, the way his jaw tightened when male doctors spoke to me, the time a patient's father had touched my arm in thanks, and I'd seen Dante's expression go cold before he controlled it. The rules that expanded gradually: text when you arrive somewhere, text when you leave, call if plans change, never go anywhere alone after dark. But it never felt suffocating, maybe because he balanced it with freedom in other ways. My apartment remained mine, my bank account remained mine, my choices remained mine. He offered, never demanded. Suggested, never ordered. Until Marcus came back. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I was leaving St. Mary's after a long shift, exhausted and thinking about the dinner Dante had planned, when I saw the familiar figure leaning against the wall near the employee entrance. He looked terrible. Thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes rumpled. When he saw me, he straightened, and something in his expression made me stop. "Claire, please. I just need 5 minutes." I should have walked past him, should have texted Marco, pressed the pendant, done any of the things Dante's security had trained me for. Instead, I found myself asking, "What do you want, Marcus?" To apologize. Really apologize. Not the scared bullshit from the restaurant. He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely miserable. "I was awful to you. For months. Years, maybe. You deserved so much better, and I'm sorry. The apology I'd wanted for so long. It should have meant something. Should have brought closure or satisfaction or something. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a distant pity for this man who'd once made me feel small." "Okay," I said simply. "Apology accepted. Goodbye, Marcus." "Wait." He stepped closer, and I saw Marco's sedan pull around the corner, approaching fast. "I know you're with him now, Caruso. Everyone knows. It's all over the society pages, the business news. Claire Morrison, the nurse who caught the most dangerous man in the city." His voice turned bitter. "But you need to know what you're getting into. He's not just some rich guy, Claire. He's—" "I know what he is." My voice was steady, certain. "Better than you ever knew what I was. He'll destroy you. Use you up and throw you away. Men like that don't—" "Gentlemen." Marco appeared at my elbow, his presence immediately changing the dynamic. 2 other security personnel flanked him, their attention fixed on Marcus with predatory focus. "Miss Morrison's ride is here. I suggest you move along." Marcus paled, stepping back. "This isn't over, Claire. When he's done with you, he won't be." The certainty in my voice surprised even me. "Because I won't let him. Now leave, Marcus, before you say something that makes this worse for yourself." Marco guided me to the car, and I didn't look back. Didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed, buried, done. My phone rang before we'd gone 2 blocks. Dante's name lit the screen. Marco told me. His voice was tight with controlled fury. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" "I'm fine. He just wanted to apologize." "Apologize?" The word came out flat, dangerous. "After months of making you feel worthless, he thinks a fucking apology is sufficient?" "Dante, I'm going to—" He stopped, and I heard him take a deliberate breath. "What do you want me to do, Claire? Name it. Anything." This was the moment. The test of everything we'd built over the past 3 weeks. I could ask him to hurt Marcus, to punish him, to make him disappear, and he would. Without hesitation, because that's what he was, what he'd always been honest about being. Or I could ask for something different. "I want you to let it go," I said quietly. "He's nothing to me now. Less than nothing. Making him suffer won't change the past, and it won't change how I feel about you." Silence. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, "How do you feel about me?" The car pulled up to my apartment building. I saw the lights on in my window, Dante waiting for me because he had a key now, because we'd reached that stage without really discussing it, because this had become as much my relationship as his. "Come upstairs," I said, "and I'll tell you." He was standing by my window when I entered, still in his work suit, the city lights painting shadows across his face. He turned when I closed the door, and the vulnerability in his expression stole my breath. "I meant what I said that first night," he said before I could speak, "about you being the closest thing to salvation I've ever known. These past 3 weeks, watching you navigate both worlds, seeing you refuse to change who you are despite the pressure, the way you still take extra shifts even though I could give you anything you want." He crossed to me, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "I love you, Claire. Obsessively, possessively, in ways that probably aren't healthy, but completely, utterly, without reservation." The words landed in my chest like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew about myself, about what I wanted, about what I deserved. "I love you too," I whispered, and felt the truth of it settle into my bones. Even though it's crazy, even though it terrifies me, even though every logical part of my brain says this is temporary insanity, it's not temporary. His forehead rested against mine, his breathing unsteady. "I don't do temporary, Claire. When I commit to something, I commit completely. You need to understand that. This isn't a phase or a fascination. This is..." He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "This is everything. I know." And I did. Could see it in the way he looked at me, in the security detail that followed me everywhere, in the pendant I never took off, in 1,000 small adjustments he'd made to his dangerous life to accommodate my safer one. "You're everything to me too," which is either the best decision I've ever made or the worst. Probably both. He smiled then, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. "But you're choosing it anyway." "I'm choosing it anyway," I echoed. He kissed me then, and it felt like falling and flying simultaneously, terrifying and exhilarating and inevitable. When he pulled back, his eyes were impossibly dark, filled with promises I knew he'd keep. "Marry me." The words hung between us, shocking in their simplicity. "What?" "Marry me, Claire. Not because I want to own you, though there's definitely some of that. Not because I want to cage you, though every possessive instinct I have wants to lock you away where nothing can touch you. But because I want the world to know you're mine as completely as I'm yours. Because I want the legal protection it gives you. No one can force you to testify against me. No one can use you as leverage the same way. Because..." His thumb traced my lower lip. "I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life knowing you chose me. That this brilliant, compassionate, strong woman looked at all my darkness and decided I was worth loving anyway. I should have said it was too soon. Should have pointed out we'd only known each other for 3 weeks. That this was moving too fast. That marriage to a man like Dante Caruso came with dangers I couldn't fully comprehend. Instead, I thought about how he'd looked at Marcus with murder in his eyes, but let him walk away, because I asked. About the way he balanced his possessive nature with genuine respect for my autonomy. About how he'd taken the broken pieces of my self-worth and handed them back as something precious. About how, for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, truly valued, truly protected, not because I was weak, but because I was worth protecting. "Yes," I said, and watched his expression transform into something almost painful in its intensity. "Yes, I'll marry you, Dante Caruso, even though you're dangerous and possessive and probably going to drive me insane, even though this is the craziest decision I've ever made. Yes." He kissed me with bruising intensity, lifting me off my feet, carrying me toward my bedroom while I laughed against his mouth. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I registered that this was it. The point of no return, the moment I stopped being Claire Morrison, independent pediatric nurse, and became something else entirely. Claire Caruso. Protected. Cherished. Loved by a man who would burn the world down to keep me safe. It should have terrified me. Instead, wrapped in his arms, his ring, produced from his pocket with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this, heavy and perfect on my finger, I felt something I'd forgotten I could feel. Powerful. 6 months later, The wedding was small, private. Just his inner circle and a handful of my friends from the hospital, held in a renovated cathedral that Dante owned and had closed to the public for the day. I wore a dress that cost more than my first car, walked down an aisle lined with blood-red roses, and married a man whose name made grown men pale with fear. Patricia from work cried. Marco stood as Dante's best man, his scarred face almost gentle as he watched us exchange vows. My mother, flown in from Florida, looked shell-shocked but pleased, charmed by Dante's old-world courtesy despite her suspicions about his business dealings. And Dante looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered, like I was salvation and damnation wrapped in white silk. Like he'd won something more valuable than all the territory and power and money he'd accumulated. When the priest declared us married, his kiss was possessive and tender simultaneously, a promise and a claim, and I kissed him back with everything in me. Because I'd chosen this, chosen him, chosen a life that balanced light and shadow, healing children by day and sleeping in the arms of a beautiful monster by night. And as we left the cathedral, his hand firm in mine, security surrounding us, but no longer needed, because I was now under the ultimate protection. His name, his ring, his absolute devotion. I finally understood what the card had meant all those months ago. Protected. Not from the world exactly, but protected in the way that mattered most. Protected from ever feeling small again. From ever being made to feel worthless. From ever forgetting that I deserved to be cherished, defended, loved with the kind of intensity that most people only read about. Happy, Mrs. Caruso? Dante murmured against my ear as we settled into the car that would take us to the private airfield, to the plane waiting to carry us somewhere tropical and private for 2 weeks away from everything. I touched the pendant that now hung alongside my wedding ring, both symbols of his obsession, his possession, his love. Both things I wore willingly, gladly, knowing exactly what they meant. Deliriously, I said, and meant it. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile, and pulled me close. Good. Because you're stuck with me now, for better or worse. Probably a lot of worse, knowing my life. I can handle it. And I could. Had proven it over the past 6 months, navigating his world while maintaining my own identity, earning the respect of his men, and the grudging acceptance of his rivals. Becoming not just Dante Caruso's wife, but Claire Caruso, someone formidable in her own right. I know you can. His lips brushed my temple. That's why I love you. The car pulled away from the cathedral, carrying us toward whatever future we'd build together. Dangerous and beautiful, and completely ours. And as the city blurred past the tinted windows, Dante's arms around me like an unbreakable promise. I felt nothing but certainty. I'd walked into that restaurant 6 months ago as someone who'd forgotten her own worth. I'd left it under the protection of the most dangerous man in the city. And now, wearing his ring and his name, I was something I'd never been before. Powerful, protected, completely, utterly loved. The gilded cage I'd feared had become something else entirely. Not a prison, but a fortress. Not a limitation, but liberation. And I'd chosen it with my eyes wide open, knowing exactly what I was getting into, knowing it was worth it, knowing he was worth it, knowing I was worth it, finally.